Laura, we understand that the Prime Minister got his call through to the victor at Mar-a-Lago today. What do we know about their discussion?
Sarah, it sounds like it was a slightly more normal discussion in such circumstances than might have occurred in 2016. The two men went through the usual paces of confirming what a close relationship the two countries have, how important we are as allies, all of those sorts of basic niceties. It did, I think, significantly include mention of Orcus because there had been some question mark amongst some commentators about what might happen to Orcus under a new Trump presidency. So it was basically a setting the scenes conversation, establishing a line of communication ahead of President-elect Trump's actual elevation to the office in January. So it was pretty standard stuff. There wasn't any discussion, I don't think, of getting rid of the Australian ambassador to Washington, Kevin Rudd, or anything controversial like that. It was really just about reaffirming and confirming that the two governments could have a good relationship.
You say that AUKUS was raised. Do we know in what terms?
Sarah, I think given the nature of the conversation, there was just a general acknowledgement that AUKUS was now a key part of the relationship. Now, at the Australian end, there's no great concern that AUKUS is under any sort of threat of Donald Trump leading America out of it. Pragmatically, the Americans in the early stages of AUKUS get to have some of their own submarines based here in Australia. Of course, we've now got B-52s, a troop rotation, 50,000 US troops. We've become a forward base for America in the last few years. And there's no reason as a result, particularly since we're going to be contributing $3 billion towards the cost of the US building more submarines in their own shipyards, there's no reason for them to withdraw at this point.
One of the issues we understand will be a priority for the new Trump administration is the potential for tariffs. Now, that could obviously have a huge impact, could have huge ramifications in Australia, Laura. How much concern is there in Canberra already about the prospect of tariffs?
I think it's mainly seen as in terms of the global disruption of the big tariffs being discussed being put on China, Sarah, the talk of 60% tariffs on China from the US and what the knock-on effects would be for the Australian economy of that into areas like lithium and some of our resources exports to China. Now, given that we were able to escape a lot of those tariff impositions in the last Trump term, I don't think there's a real concern that we'll get the lower 10 to 20% tariffs that have been discussed. But essentially nobody actually knows exactly how President-elect Trump may proceed with this. So it's a general sort of observation that it's going to be disruptive for the globe rather than a concern that it may disrupt our bilateral relationship.
Now, on the political level, has Trump's victory, in a sense, put the wind in the opposition leader's sails?
You can certainly see Peter Dutton in his comments today in a radio interview taking up some of those themes from Donald Trump-style electioneering. Once again, he's talked a lot about the problems of too much immigration. He mixes up a lot of talk about illegal immigrants and too much other sorts of migration. So that's one theme that's come out, and he has said that just as immigration was a big issue in the US election, it will be a big issue in the Australian election. For the government's part, it's actually taking a different message out of the election in the US, which is about cost of living, that it was completely primary, and it believes that it's pretty well placed now in terms of its rhetoric and its defences on cost of living issues.
And just briefly, Laura, on climate, because we know that in campaigning, at least, Donald Trump said he would pull out of the Paris Accords commitments to net zero. Again, what is the view from Canberra about, if he goes ahead with that, what's the view from Canberra about the consequences?
Well, interestingly, Sarah, both sides of politics here are continuing to commit to net zero, regardless of what Donald Trump does in terms of taking America out of Paris. Obviously, it's not a great thing if that is what is to occur, but the government is certainly saying we are going to proceed as we thought. And also the assessment is that in some ways the real mover here in the global situation, both in terms of emissions and in terms of transitional technologies and things, is China. So as long as China sees an interest in continuing the path towards lower emissions, that will be the most important thing, the most important signal in global policy in the next decade or so.
Laura Tingle, thank you very much indeed for talking to me, especially here in Washington. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.